Hi, welcome to Gendering Geopolitics, the New Lines Institute's Twitter series that consists of short and sharp 10-minute conversations with women who are making an impact around the world. My name is Kallie Mitchell, and I'm an analyst at the New Lines Institute. Today I'm joined by Amna Baig, Superintendent of Police with the Police Service of Pakistan. Throughout her career, Amna has worked to end impunity for gender-based violence and to empower women through access to justice. Thank you so much for joining me today, Amna, to talk about gender-responsive policing and accountability for crimes of violence against women.
Thank you, Kallie, for having me.
In Pakistan, the conviction rate for crimes of gender-based violence is only around 1% to 2%. To promote women's access to justice, you founded Pakistan's first gender protection unit to address crimes of gender-based violence. Can you speak a bit about why a specific unit was needed and how the unit contributes to better accountability for violence against women in Pakistan?
Yeah, Kallie. So I'd first like to talk a bit about what Pakistan is and how big a country we are and how many women do we have. Pakistan is a huge country in terms of population. We are the fifth most populous country in the world. We have a population of about 220 million people, and of course, half of them are women. The society is generally traditional, conventional, and because of these reasons, women find it extremely hard to access justice. It's considered a taboo for women of my country to visit police stations and seek help. UN Women recently reported that 98% of the women in Pakistan who face domestic violence or gender-based violence do not report it. And one of the main reason is that they do not have good, I'd say, access to justice, easy access to justice. Keeping that in mind, we established this gender protection unit to I'd say, make things a bit more worse for women of our country. The female police officers in the country make less than 2% of the total police force. The number is finally steadily increasing. However, for the past so many years, it has been below 2%. And because of all of these reasons combined, women generally do not have, I'd say, easily navigable paths to justice, and they end up suffering injustice all their lives, and they do not end up reporting the gender-based violence and domestic violence that they face. So in order to make it more accessible for them, in order to make the police more approachable for them, we started this gender protection unit. The whole model was that from the start of the complaint till the completion of investigation, everything would be handled by female police officer. I'm a firm believer of the fact that only women can access women, especially in a country like ours. So the idea and the model was to have a hotline which is 24/7, to have a walk-in facility for the residents of Islamabad, which is the capital city of Pakistan. It has a population of 2.5 million people. And we started this 24-hour service where the responding officers were female police officers, where the investigating officers were female police officers for the gender-based crimes. And within 6 months of its establishment, we ended up with 1,000+ complaints from across the city.
It seems that that's so important, especially given the difference between the way men experience violence in public and women experience violence in often a domestic setting, where it feels that police aren't privy to intervene in those sorts of violence. So I think that it's amazing that you've made that clear, that there is an avenue for women's recourse for violence.
Yeah.
Access to justice for victims of gender-based violence is a huge issue around the world, too. What can policing institutions globally learn from the work of the Gender Protection Unit?
I think, again, we need to realize that even in, I was recently in the US on a fellowship, and I was talking about gender-based violence and domestic violence in the US. And one of the most surprising things for me was that we generally expect, the women of the first world to be way more empowered, way more aware of their rights. But what I saw was that most of these victims and these survivors had the same issues that we have back home here in Pakistan. We saw there was a lot of shame attached to the whole idea of gender-based violence, as you mentioned yourself, that it happens within the four walls of a house or a home. So it's really hard to talk about the fact that maybe your husband, your brother, or your boyfriend is beating you, whereas you have put up this very happy face out for the public. So again, the stigma and the shame, and most importantly, in sexual crimes, we see that a lot more women feel more comfortable talking to women than men, irrespective of where they are. So I feel that Having specialized units definitely increases reporting, increases access to justice, and it makes the victim or the survivor way more comfortable. We've had cases where a lot of women have come to gender protection units seeking just general help in terms of their civil matters, for example, getting a divorce, talking about custody, just seeking information regarding their rights. And one of the best things that has come out of the gender protection unit is when we hear the survivors and the victims say that, I probably would not have reported this if I had to go to a police station and report it to a male police officer. And recently, my boss also introduced a transgender desk in the gender protection unit, and we saw that a lot of transgenders started coming to the gender protection unit with their problems. So that definitely showed us the impact of inclusivity and the importance of it. So of course, I always feel, and I always say that it's so important to have specialized units that cater to the needs, specific needs of the survivors of a specific crime.
Absolutely. It's so important that police are serving the entirety of their community, and especially given what we know about how the security of women relates to the security of states. In addition to units to address violence against women, how can law enforcement institutions meaningfully mainstream gender, and how do gender responsive policing practices improve operational effectiveness across police services?
I think, Kaylee, one of the thing is that the first of all, the police needs to understand that gender-based violence and domestic violence is a crime. There's a lot more awareness now around the issue. Generally, when the police officer sees a crime, they see that the assailant is most of the times either not known to the victim or not related to the victim. But in the gender crimes or in the domestic violence situation, the perpetrator is known to the victim. A research was done, which was again and again quoted during my fellowship to the US, and the police over there kept saying that it takes around 7 times before a victim of gender-based violence or domestic violence to come about and report it. That talks a lot more about the type of crime that it is. And what ends up happening is that most of the time it's reported by the survivor, by the victim, but then again she goes back to the husband or the boyfriend or whoever is doing that to her. And the next time when she comes about, the police says that, oh, of course we took notice the first time, why did you go back to him? And they do not understand specifically the dynamic that's at interplay. So it's one of the most important things would be to make the police understand that this crime is as serious as it gets. And secondly, it's not easy for a victim to just come out and talk about it and just leave her situation, just by reporting it the first time. So it's the understanding that the law enforcement needs to have about this specific crime, which is different from the other crimes. And secondly, again, I'd say training them to handle such victims, training them to it's very different to convince a victim of domestic violence and a gender-based violence to leave her situation than another victim of another crime. So in order to ensure that the police is equipped to handle such victims, trainings are of utmost importance.
Absolutely. And something that also I think is important, especially given as I talked about, the relationship between the security of women and security of states, is the building trust in a community. Women are especially tapped into their communities and make a valuable asset in reporting and investigating and prosecuting criminal activity. So that will help police fight against all crime, including organized crime, violent extremism, other forms of violent crime. So I think that it's important that staff respond effectively to crimes of violence against women and girls, knowing what we do about how that improves reporting and operational effectiveness.
Yeah, of course.
Policing in Pakistan, like many other countries around the world, is a male-dominated profession, with women making up only 2% of the entire police force in Pakistan, as you said. How has the Gender Protection Unit changed those numbers, and what is the outlook for the future?
Kaylee, so I recently shared on my social media as well, for the first time in Pakistan's history, in the top command of police, which is which is brought in through the civil service. Generally, around 20 to 25 police officers are inducted in the supervisory roles through the civil service exam in Pakistan, and for the first time in the country's history, 50% of these officers are women. So that's a huge achievement for us. For only a few years ago, we would see that the number would be below 1%. So we see that there is a steady increase. We see a huge hope. The second most important thing is that I feel that even if it's 2%, the number of female police officers, what we saw in the past was that their utilization, the utilization of female police officers as a resource was not being done properly. Most of these female police officers were kept from operational policing duties, and they were put in administrative roles, and that kept them from field operations. So with the Gender Protection Unit, we started actively involving them in investigations. We started actively involving them in responding to crimes. We started actively involving them in making arrests. So that basically changed the perception around female police officers who were previously thought not capable enough to do everything that is required of a police officer. But then again, I think times have changed. Social media has played a huge role in telling women that this career is not just for men, it's for women, and they have seen other female police officers wearing that uniform, doing the job, and that has motivated a lot more women now to come up and take up police as a career.
Absolutely. And that's a role that you've stepped into yourself, leading the way for more women in policing. Amna, thank you so much for sharing your insights on gender mainstreaming and policing and the empowerment of women through access to justice. And of course, for taking the time to join me on this episode of Gendering Geopolitics.